In this video I'll be covering the main three Streets of Rage megadrive titles and giving a brief history on the franchise. Streets of Rage was released by Sega in 1991 for the Sega 16-bit console. Sega were not new to the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre. After all, they had released Golden Axe a few years earlier in the arcades before coming to Sega's home consoles. Streets of Rage starts out with a small story of the city being taken over by a crime syndicate, and it's down to you playing to take down the crime lord Mr. X. Similar to Golden Axe, the player can choose between a few fighters before moving through the levels to an end boss. Each character has their own abilities. In this game you can choose between Adam, Axel and Blaze. They each have different statistics for power, jump and speed. Each control button can pull off a move, including a special which kills everything on screen. You need to be careful you don't use these too early, as you may find yourself having trouble later on in the levels. You can also pick up weapons from the floor and also destroy telephone boxes, crates, anything else that can be destroyed, and usually you'll get some health back or some money that just adds to your points. Once you get to the end of a stage, you'll come across a boss fight. This one will start off quite easy, being level 1, but as you do progress through the game it definitely does get more difficult. Sometimes you will even have to defeat more than one at a time, or they'll have a double life bar. Streets of Rage was also released on the Sega Game Gear at the end of 1992, but unfortunately cuts out 3 of the levels and Adam is removed from the game, leaving you with just Axel and Blaze. You can at least use a link cable to hook up 2 Sega Game Gears and play 2 players. The game was also released on the Sega Master System a year later, but despite having more levels than the Game Gear version, it was seriously lacking in other areas, such as no multiplayer mode and only 2 characters could appear on the screen at one time. Streets of Rage has also been re-released several times. It was on Mega Games 2 on the Mega Drive and Sega Classics arcade collection for the Mega CD. It even showed up on the European copies of Sonic Gems collection for the Nintendo GameCube, but unfortunately never made it for American release due to age classification. One standout for Streets of Rage was its unique style of music composed by Yuzo Koshiro. It's quite obvious he was influenced by Western music at the time. Streets of Rage is an enjoyable side-scrolling beat-em-up. There's 8 levels to get through and it's well worth playing through with 2 players. Single player is enjoyable but definitely not as much as 2. Don't go expecting the depth of a game such as Street Fighter 2 because you won't find it here. One last fact with Streets of Rage, or any of the other games in the series actually, is depending on the region console you're plugging your cartridge in, it will change between the American or European name, which is Streets of Rage, or the Japanese version, which is called Bare Knuckle. Streets of Rage 2 was released in 1992 for the Sega Megadrive. It follows on from the events of the first game and plays quite similar to the original. Mr. X has returned and taken Adam hostage. Adam's brother Skate now joins the roster of playable characters along with Blaze and Axel, as well as a new character called Max. Everything in Streets of Rage 2 has been improved. The graphics are bigger and look better, the music is fantastic, and the gameplay has been refined to near perfection. One of the biggest changes is that the special item has been removed from the game. In its replacement is character-specific special moves. Pulling off a special move depletes your health, so it's unwise to use this too often. One improvement with Streets of Rage 2 is that each character you come up against has a health bar and an aim. These are a nice feature over the original. Each character has been given some extra moves and you can now throw the knife at an enemy if you wish to. Again, Streets of Rage 2 was ported to the Sega Game Gear and Master System. Unlike the first game, it is very different that it's been specifically made to suit the 8-bit hardware. Unfortunately, Max is not a playable character in either of these versions, along with a few other minor adjustments. The music in Streets of Rage 2 is a standout feature of the game. A lot of people have said it was way ahead of its time when it was released, and it still holds up as some of the best video game music created. Some songs did sound like a little bit too much that they have been influenced by groups like The Shaman, Base Value and Public Enemy. Streets of Rage 2 was available on the Sega Dreamcast collection, the Sega Smash Pack. It is also available on the Ultimate Sega Sonic collection for the Xbox 360 and PS3, as well as other console releases. Streets of Rage 2 is critically acclaimed and is considered by many as the best of its genre. If you haven't played this game, it is well worth trying out, you won't regret it. Streets of Rage 3 arrived on the Mega Drive in 1994. It came with a lot of changes, some that were good and some that were bad. The game returns to Mr. X back in control and going under the guise of a company to cover for his illegal activities. It's a shame that the plot could not have introduced another threat to separate it from the previous instalments of the games. Axel, Skate and Blaze return to this third game along with a new character, Dr. Zan. Dr. Zan has the ability of changing any weapon he picks up into a ball of energy to use against his opponents. Streets of Rage 3 does bring a more story-driven narrative to the game though. Cutscenes are used in between levels to advance the gameplay. Whether these add anything to the game is up for argument though. The game features 4 different endings depending on your difficulty level and how long it took to finish certain levels. The difficulty has been ramped up considerably in the game, and the stages are a lot longer. This is probably because there are only 6 stages compared to the previous 8 in the first 2 games. Unfortunately, the music took a bit of a dive in this version. A lot of the music sounds like a mess and lacks the atmosphere of the second game, which is greatly disappointing. Unlike the other 2 games, there was no version produced for the 8-bit Master System and Game Gear. This was due to the Mega Drive's popularity. The game is much more fast-paced and introduces new gameplay ideas, such as having to escape from a truck by smashing through walls before it can get to you. I personally found this ruin the flow of the game, and it's an easy way to lose a lot of lives. The game does support Sega's 6-button controller, but it is not necessary. Most people think of Streets of Rage 3 as the worst in the series. Truth be told, it is still enjoyable to some extent, but there really was no improvement over its predecessor. People were moving to beat-em-ups like Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct, which were ruling the arcades and home consoles at the time. The game was the last to be found in the Streets of Rage series. One secret character can be found hidden in the game. There are multiple ways to unlock him though. Roo the Kangaroo. He can be seen in the second level chained up. Roo has his own unique set of moves and is more of a novelty to play as. The Japanese version has some differences. There are some changes to the story as well as some swearing. Stage 6 is longer and there is a part where you can ride a motorbike. It is not known why some of these changes were made. So that's all of the Streets of Rage games wrapped up. So what's next for the franchise? Well, there was a gameplay demo of a Dreamcast Streets of Rage 4, but nothing would ever come from it. It's probably a good thing, as the demo looked terrible and it introduced a first-person mode as well as the traditional side-scrolling sections. Scrolling beat-em-ups just kind of died off, with only beat-em-ups surviving the long haul. All of the Streets of Rage games currently can be found on Steam, Xbox Live, PSN or Nintendo's Virtual Console if you want to give them a go. If you are going to play one of them, make sure it's number 2, as it is the best out of all 3. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you want to see more, please subscribe or comment on the video. Thank you.